They called her fragile, soft, a creature of skin and bone in a world built for monsters. But when the sky burned red and the predator's young screamed for help, it wasn't the warriors who stood between them and death. It was the human, Arya Chen. Armed with nothing but science tools and courage that defied instinct, she faced nightmares made of metal and flesh. And when it was over, every predator who once called her prey now carries a blade that bears her name. If that opening gave you chills, you're in the right place. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss another human legend from the stars. Share this story with someone who believes courage comes only from strength, because what Arya proved will change that forever. All right, ready? Let us dive into the tale of the human who redefined what it means to be a predator. Before the stars ever heard their war songs, the Kravathi were predators born of violence. Their world, a molten jungle wrapped in storms, carved its rulers from blood and bone. Every breath they took, every scar they bore was a trophy of survival. They hunted in silence, four-armed titans with scale plates harder than steel. Their jaws could shatter rock, their claws could gut armor. For thousands of years they ruled their planet by one law: only the strong deserve to live. And then, the humans came, soft-skinned, flat-toothed, walking upright like prey that had forgotten to be afraid. When the Kravathi first met them, they didn't know whether to laugh or attack. How could such fragile things have reached the stars? No claws, no venom, no armor, just flesh. To the Kravathi, humans looked like an evolutionary joke, cosmic sheep pretending to be wolves. But what the Kravathi didn't understand was that humans had evolved a different kind of weapon, a weapon invisible, silent but deadlier than any fang or talon: the mind. And among them was Arya Chen, a xenobiologist posted to the Kravathi colony world of Thorn-Kai. Her mission wasn't to fight or command. She was there to study, to understand the alien ecosystems that thrived under Thorn-Kai's toxic skies. To the Kravathi, she was harmless background noise. The small, quiet human who walked the red plains with her scanners and sample jars. The cubs liked her, though. Maybe because she never bared her teeth like a threat. Maybe because she smiled the way predators never did. The adults watched from afar, amused. They called her Featherskin, the soft one. And yet, whenever she passed, they noticed something unusual. She didn't cower, didn't bow, didn't look away. Her gaze, calm, steady, curious, made even the apex predators feel seen in a way they didn't have words for. Still, they thought she was harmless. After all, what danger could a creature like that ever pose? Arya loved Thorn-Kai in a way most off-worlders never could. She saw beauty where others saw terror. The molten clouds, the shrieking winds, the crimson moss that shimmered like veins under the sun. Her logs were filled with notes, sketches, questions. She treated the planet not like a battlefield, but like a living thing worth listening to. But beneath that curiosity lived something else, a quiet fire that only humans seem to carry. The kind that doesn't burn for power or territory, but for purpose. Arya had read the Kravathi histories, page after page of blood and conquest. She didn't judge them. She understood something they didn't, that strength and compassion aren't opposites. They're different sides of the same human coin. When she wasn't in the field, she spent her time teaching the cubs simple words in galactic common: water, stone, friend. The cubs would chirp the words back, tails twitching in amusement. One day, an older Kravathi warrior named Drax approached her. His scales bore the marks of 100 battles, his claws dull from centuries of killing. "You waste time with them," he said. Arya looked up from her datapad. "I'm teaching them." "They are not yours to teach," Drax growled. "They must learn to kill, not talk." Arya smiled, that same calm, unflinching smile. "And who teaches them to live?" Drax had no answer for that. He turned away, unsettled by how small she was, and how little that seemed to matter.
Weeks passed. Storms came and went, and the colony settled into its usual rhythm of vigilance and pride. But Arya noticed something others missed, a pattern in the sensor data. distorted energy readings near the outer valleys, faint signatures that didn't belong. When she reported it, the Kravathi command dismissed her warning. "Sensor ghosts," they said. "Our scanners detect nothing." But Arya knew better. She'd seen these readings before. Outposts stripped to ash, planets devoured from orbit. She had studied them in human archives. The pattern matched one name, Ravagers, a swarm of biomechanical predators that consumed worlds, leaving nothing but silence behind. A nightmare humanity had fought at the edge of known space, and nearly lost. But by the time the Kravathi realized she was right, it was too late. The crimson sky split open and the nightmare arrived. It began with a sound, a low, pulsing hum that rippled to the colony's steel towers. Then came the light, red, blinding, and from the clouds, the Ravager ships fell like burning comets. To the Kravathi, it was the perfect storm. Finally, a battle worthy of their legends. Warriors roared, claws unsheathed, blades drawn. They would defend their territory to the last breath. But not everyone was near the main colony when the attack began. On the far eastern plain, far from the stronghold, beyond communication range, Arya was cataloging soil samples, and with her were 6 Kravathi cubs, following her like shadows. When the alarms began to wail, the cubs panicked. Their chittering cries echoed through the canyon. Arya's datapad flickered. Signal lost. No way to call for help. Above, something screamed through the atmosphere. Metal wings, mechanical limbs, a swarm descending like locusts. The Ravagers had found them. That moment, the one that history would later immortalize in carvings, songs, and odes, began in silence. Arya looked up at the crimson sky, saw the creatures closing in, and knew what was coming. 6 cubs. No weapons. No soldiers. No time. And yet she didn't run. Her breathing slowed. Her eyes sharpened. Every instinct her ancestors had carried through 1,000 wars rose within her like an ancient ghost. She reached for her calm and whispered, calm and steady, "This is Arya Chen, Eastern settlement under attack. I have 6 cubs with me. I'm buying time. Send help." The predators of Thorn Kai would later play that transmission in every academy, every war temple, every home. It wasn't just her words, it was the tone. Calm, unshaken, the voice of prey that had decided to stop running. And in that instant, everything the Kravathi believed about strength began to crumble. The first blast came like thunder made of metal. A shockwave tore through the canyon, scattering dust and sparks as shards of molten rock rained down. The cubs screamed, a sound that, even in Kravathi memory, would never fade. Arya didn't flinch. She scanned the horizon, eyes narrowing against the crimson glare. 12 Ravager scouts, biomechanical monsters the size of armored trucks, were advancing in formation. Their limbs clicked with mechanical rhythm, their carapaces gleaming like oil and bone fused together. Her datapad confirmed what her instincts already knew. No backup, no signal, no time. The cubs huddled behind her legs, trembling. 6 small lives, 6 beating hearts. Arya's voice softened. "In the cave," she said quietly. "Go. Now." They obeyed, something that surprised even them. No Kravathi cub took orders from prey. But at that moment, Arya didn't look like prey. She looked like command itself. She had no rifle, no armor, just a field kit strapped to her waist, a geological torch, 3 emergency flares, and a mind that refused to quit. Arya moved fast in a way only humans could when the impossible stare them down. She snapped a flare, igniting it into a blinding red streak, and hurled it at the lead Ravager's sensor cluster. The creature shrieked, stumbling as its optical nodes flared white. Another, then another, 3 down, blinded, confused. She pulled open her kit, fingers shaking only once before steadying. Inside was a sample detonator, used for controlled seismic charges. Designed to crack stone, not fight monsters. But stone wasn't all that different from armor, was it? She armed it, set it by the canyon entrance, and yelled to the cubs, "Cover your ears." The explosion hit like a god's heartbeat. The canyon wall collapsed inward, crushing 2 Ravagers beneath a tidal wave of rock and dust. The ground trembled. 5 gone. 7 remained. And now, they were angry. They came crawling over the rubble, metallic limbs scraping, serrated mouths gnashing. Arya grabbed her plasma torch, the tool she used to cut through mineral samples, and flicked it on. A thin, bright blade of blue light hissed into existence. Her heart raced, but her mind was cold, calculating. Every breath measured, every motion precise. No training, no armor, just focus. She remembered her father's words from long ago, a miner who once told her, "Fear sharpens you, kid. Just don't let it cut too deep." And so she turned fear into precision. The first Ravager lunged. She sidestepped, the torch cutting through its joint. Sparks exploded. The creature fell, limbs twitching. Another charged. She rolled aside, slicing through a fuel conduit. Fire erupted, devouring the machine from within. For 17 minutes, she fought. 17 minutes that would outlive every legend written before or after. In the colony command center, Drax received the first garbled distress ping. He recognized her ID code, Arya Chen, Eastern Outpost. Static, then one line. 6 cubs, holding position. He didn't wait for orders. He didn't even realize he was roaring until his soldiers followed behind him. When they reached the eastern canyon, the smell of smoke and burnt oil filled the air. And there she was, small human, still. The battlefield around her was silent. 12 Ravagers in pieces, black ichor seeping into the ground. The cave entrance sealed behind her, protecting the 6 cubs who peeked out from the shadows, eyes wide and wet with fear. Arya lay at the entrance, one arm burned, the plasma torch still clutched tight. Her blood was everywhere. Human blood, bright, fragile, defiant. Drax knelt beside her, claws trembling against the earth. For the first time in his life, he felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Not rage, not victory, grief. He examined the canyon walls, the explosive placement, the flare residue, the scorch marks from redirected blasts. This wasn't random. It was strategy, a perfect defense built not by instinct, but by thought. Drax whispered, more to himself than anyone else. This wasn't the work of prey. One of his warriors looked at him, confused. Then what was she? Drax's mandibles clicked softly, his voice shaking. A predator, the most dangerous kind. The cubs emerged slowly, gathering around Arya's body. One of them, the smallest, reached for her hand. It was still warm. They didn't understand death. Not yet. All they knew was that the human had stood between them and the monsters. And now she wouldn't wake up. The colony's medic stepped forward to recover the body, but Drax stopped him. He lifted Arya himself, carefully, reverently. For a creature built to tear and crush, his hands had never moved so gently. She will be honored, he said quietly, not as one of us, but as something greater. The others bowed their heads, a gesture foreign to their species, until that moment, when they returned to the colony. Every Kravathi, soldier, elder, cub, gathered in silence. The sight of Drax carrying the small human through the gates broke something deep within them. The predator race of Thorn Kai had met true strength for the first time, and it didn't roar. It simply stood. That night, the sky was still red from burning wreckage, and on the walls of the great hall, Drax carved 6 words in the old tongue. We were wrong about the prey. It was the beginning of a legend that would change 2 species forever. The fire of battle had long gone cold, but on Thorn Kai, the name Arya Chen burned brighter than any sun. The Kravathi were not a people given to softness. Their legends were written in blood, their heroes measured by the kills they carried into the afterlife. Yet when Drax, their oldest warrior, spoke her name, the name of a human scientist, not a single claw stirred, not a single voice dared interrupt. The colony stood in silence as the pyre burned. Flames licked the sky, painting the smoke in crimson streaks. The cubs she had saved stood closest, their eyes reflecting the light. 6 small shapes, unblinking, unafraid. They were the proof of her victory, her living legacy. When the ceremony ended, Drax remained behind. He stared into the dying embers and whispered, "How do we honor what we could never understand?" In Kravathi custom, Heroes were celebrated with weapons, blades forged from the remains of their last kill, their strength reborn through steel. But Arya had left no weapon behind, just broken tools, shattered circuits, and a torch that had burned itself out defending the young. Drax gathered the fragments himself. The melted casing of her geological torch, the twisted metal of Ravager armor, bits of human technology, still humming faintly with residual heat. He took them to his forge. For 3 months, the elder warrior worked in silence. Every hammer strike echoed through the canyon like a drumbeat of memory. He melted Ravager metal with shards of her tools, merging predator and prey, science and war, until something new was born. The blade that emerged was unlike any Kravathi weapon. It was slimmer, lighter, built for precision instead of brute force. It didn't roar when swung. It whispered. Along its edge, Drax carved a single human word, a name written in the same trembling script she had used to label her field samples. Arya. In his own language, he named it Chenter, Guardian's Edge. When the weapon cooled, he held it to the light. The reflection was pale blue, the same color as her plasma torch flame. This, Drax said softly, is not a weapon. It's a memory made sharp. When he presented the blade to the colony, the crowd fell silent. The 6 cubs stepped forward, now older by months but forever marked by that day. They touched the blade together, claws trembling. "We carry Arya," Drax said to them. "We protect the young. We stand when others run." The words became an oath, the oath of the Guardian. And then something happened that no Kravathi historian could explain. One by one, the warriors in the crowd stepped forward. Each demanded a blade like it, not for show, not for status, but for meaning. They didn't want to own Arya's memory. They wanted to carry it. Forge masters across the Kravathi worlds began crafting new blades, each one infused with fragments of Ravager steel, and inscribed with Arya's name. No 2 were identical, but all shared the same core design, light, balanced, human in form. A warrior was not allowed to wield a Chenter until they had proven worthy of it. To earn one, they had to demonstrate not dominance, but protection. Saving a life became as honorable as taking one. Strength was no longer measured only in kills, but in mercy. It was a revolution born not from politics, but from a human's final breath. Across generations, the Chenta became more than steel. It became language. Before every battle, Kravathi soldiers would press their claws to the engraved name and whisper the same vow Arya had unknowingly taught them. "I carry Arya. I protect the young. I stand when others run." And when human explorers later arrived on Kravathi worlds, they were met not with suspicion, but with reverence. The predators who once viewed them as weak now lowered their heads in respect. Many humans didn't understand why. Some thought it was superstition. Others said it was guilt. But to the Kravathi, it was neither. It was remembrance. They knew that the universe had given them a paradox, a fragile creature who redefined strength, and they vowed never to forget it. Drax, old now and scarred beyond counting, carried the original Chenta with him until the end of his days. He never allowed it to be hung in a museum or locked in a shrine. He kept it sharp, polished, battle-ready. Because heroes, he said, do not belong behind glass. On the anniversary of Arya's stand, he would travel to the canyon. There, he'd plant the blade in the earth and whisper the words she had spoken on her final transmission. "I'm buying time." And he'd add softly, "You bought us eternity." The cubs she saved grew into warriors of legend, each bearing her name as part of their own. Karachin, Dalchin, Velishchin. They carried her spirit into the stars, leading fleets and forging alliances that reshaped Kravathi destiny. Wherever they went, the phrase followed them. To be called Chun is to stand unbroken. Generations later, even human soldiers began to recognize the design of the Kravathi blades, narrow, elegant, deadly. Some officers asked why the alien warriors carried weapons with human letters carved into them. The answer was always the same. Because we learned from the dead how to live. By the time the galaxy caught wind of the Chenta tradition, it had already become sacred. Warriors traded stories of the human who fought without armor. Some called her the soft predator. Others, the guardian of Thorn Kai. But among the Kravathi, her title was simpler, the one who stood. And every time a young warrior forged her first blade, the forge's fire reflected on the steel like blue flame, a faint echo of the light from a long-dead human's torch. Arya Chen, scientist, human, legend. She had come to Thorn Kai to study life. She left by teaching an entire species how to value it. 17 minutes. That's how long the human lasted. Though lasted wasn't the word Drax later used. He said she commanded those 17 minutes. Owned them. Bent time itself around the heartbeat of a species that had once called her weak. Those minutes began with chaos. 12 Ravagers descending through dust and flame, metal grinding against stone. Each one a fusion of flesh and circuitry, claws of tungsten, tendrils like razors, and cores that pulsed with sick red light. They were made to consume, to erase. But in that canyon, they met something they weren't programmed for: resistance from prey. Arya's first move had already thrown them off balance. Flares had blinded 3. The canyon entrance had collapsed, blocking the quickest route, and the cubs, precious, trembling, were tucked deep within the cave's shadow. She had turned the battlefield into a trap without even meaning to. Every rock, every echo, every flicker of light, she used it. She wasn't faster, stronger, or deadlier. She was smarter. The torch hissed in her hand, the light flickering blue across her face. She moved not like a soldier, but like a scientist experimenting in real time. Each motion an adjustment to data only she could see. A Ravager lunged from the rubble. Fast, too fast. Arya ducked under its swing and drove the torch upward to the throat joint. The creature convulsed. Sparks erupted. She yanked free, ducked again, rolled, and the plasma blade flared out, slicing another attacker's fuel line. An explosion followed, painting the canyon in red fire. Her lungs burned. Her ears rang. But her voice stayed calm, even when she whispered to herself, "Not yet, not done." Up on the colony ridge, the defense commander tried to lock onto her signal. Nothing but static, but that static carried faint bursts, small fragments of her voice, carried by wind and interference. The audio team tried to clean it up. What they heard chilled them. Hold position. "You're okay. Stay low. Almost there." The words weren't meant for command. They were for the cubs. Even in the middle of a fight that no one could win, her first instinct was to comfort. Minute 8. Her arm was bleeding. Her torch flickered. The flare smoke burned her throat. 3 Ravagers left. She looked around and realized something that would later make even Drax shudder. They weren't attacking randomly anymore. They were adapting, studying her. For a brief second, fear tried to take hold, the kind that freezes prey in place. But Arya didn't run. She smiled through bloodied lips. "You learn fast," she said softly. "So do we." She grabbed a fallen Ravager's limb, a jagged blade still glowing hot, and jammed it into her belt as a makeshift weapon. When the next one lunged, she didn't retreat. She charged. It wasn't strategy anymore. It was defiance. She slashed upward, tore through wires and sinew, and went down under its weight. The machine screeched, half alive, half dead. She twisted, drove the torch into its core, and the thing went still. Her heartbeat slowed. Her breathing steadied. She whispered, "That's 7. Minute 15. Only 2 remained, 1 large, 1 fast." Her equipment alarm screamed warnings. Temperature spikes, oxygen drop, radiation breach. She ignored them all. The larger Ravager struck first. She dodged left, too slow. Its limb tore across her back. She stumbled but stayed upright, blood dripping onto the sand. The smaller one darted in, a blur of motion, but she kicked a flare into its mouth and watched it ignite from the inside out. The explosion hurled her back against the canyon wall. The last one came crawling through fire. Limbs gone but still moving. It wasn't even a creature anymore, just a nightmare code and instinct. It lunged, and she met it with her final strength, plasma torch slashing across its core. When the light died, so did the sound. 17 minutes had passed. The Kravathi rescue team arrived 7 minutes later. By then, the smoke had thinned. The canyon was quiet. They expected to find bodies, the cubs torn apart, the human gone. What they found instead was something that made even Drax's battle-hardened heart stop. The human stood, or rather had stood, her body lay against the cave entrance, burned, broken, but still guarding it. The plasma torch was embedded in the stone, sealing the final gap like a gate of light that had refused to go out. Behind her, the cubs were alive, every single one. Drax fell to one knee. The others followed without command. No words, no roars, just silence, the kind of silence that becomes sacred. He inspected the scene, tracing the scorch marks, the debris, the precision of every move. To Kravathi's eyes, it looked impossible. She had fought with strategy, not instinct, with purpose, not rage. She had fought like them, and yet, more, this was not prey, Drax said softly. This was a predator mind, the rarest kind, one that kills not for hunger, but for love. They carried her body back to the colony in silence. The cubs walked beside them, each one clutching a piece of her broken equipment, as if afraid that letting go would make her vanish completely. When the funeral came, every warrior attended. Even the off-world fleets paused their patrols to stream the ceremony. In Kravathi tradition, the dead are honored by the sound of their weapons striking stone. But Arya had no weapon. So Drax struck the earth with his own claws until blood stained the soil. She gave her life for our young, he said. We call her human, but from this day forward she is Kravathi. The colony roared, not in grief, but in vow. From that night, her name became something more than sound. It became a promise whispered before battle. Stand when others run. 17 minutes. That's all it took for a single human to rewrite the definition of predator. And in that short span of time, Arya Chen did what no Kravathi warlord had done in centuries. She united them. Decades passed. Worlds turned. And still, the Kravathi carried blades that whispered a human name, Arya. To outsiders, it seemed like ritual. To the Kravathi, it was truth. A truth etched in every strike, every oath, every breath before battle. On the day the old enemies returned, the Ravagers, rebuilt and reborn, the galaxy stood at the edge of extinction once again. Only this time, the predators were not divided. Humans and Kravathi fought side by side. The war council met aboard the human dreadnought Atlas Dawn, its walls lined with banners from 100 worlds. At the head of the chamber stood Drax, older now, scales dulled, eyes glowing faintly beneath the years. Across from him sat Admiral Celine Rao, a human officer who had once served with Arya Chen before Thorn Kai. She still remembered her friend, the scientist who laughed at danger, who believed that understanding was the galaxy's rarest courage. When Drax entered, silence followed. He carried with him the original Chenter, the first blade forged from Ravager steel and human fire. He placed it gently on the conference table. The blade glimmered faintly, as if remembering battle. When we first met your kind, Drax said, we saw weakness, skin, bone, fear. We were wrong. He pointed a claw toward the blade. She taught us that strength is not the absence of fear. It's the will to stand anyway. Celine looked down at the engraving, the single human word, Arya. Her throat tightened. She whispered. She always said peace begins with understanding. Seemed she was right. Again. Drax's mandibles clicked, what the Kravathi had come to call a smile. She didn't give us peace, Admiral. She gave us purpose. When the Ravagers struck the joint fleet at Delta Saran, the sky once again burned red. But this time, when the enemy descended, it wasn't a lone human who stood between life and death. It was an army of predators. Kravathi warriors wielding blades that glowed blue, reciting the human's oath. I carry Arya. I protect the young. I stand when others run. The humans beside them joined in, voices of different species blending into one. A war cry born not of dominance, but unity. The Ravagers broke, not because of weapons, but because for the first time, the galaxy's predators fought with the heart of their prey. When the battle ended, Drax found Celine amid the ruins. She was holding the Chenter, its edge cracked but unbroken. He knelt beside her, exhausted but alive. She would have liked this, Celine murmured. You and me, Predators and prey, fighting together. Drax nodded slowly. She didn't just teach us understanding, Admiral. She taught us that humans are the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. Selene raised a brow. Because we fight. No, Drax said. Because you protect. Not your kind. Everyone's. He stood, towering yet humbled, and together they looked to the stars. The fires had dimmed. The silence that followed was not of loss, but of balance. Years later, on Thornkai, a new monument was built where Arya's stand had taken place. It wasn't made of stone or steel. It was a living monument, a grove of crimson moss cultivated from her original samples, glowing softly under the planet's pale suns. At its center stood a single figure carved from black crystal, a human woman holding a torch, her face calm, eyes forward. Beneath the statue, the inscription read in both languages. Here stood Arya Chen. She fought not because she was strong, but because others needed her to be. Every year, Kravathi cubs were brought to the site. They would place their small claws upon the soil and repeat the words taught to them by their elders. To be Chun is to stand unbroken. And across human worlds, the story spread like wildfire in classrooms and holofilms in whispered bedtime tales. Children would ask, was she real? And their parents would smile, answering, real enough to be remembered. Historians called it the turning of the predator. Soldiers called it the lesson of Thornkai. But among storytellers, human and Kravathi alike, it had a simpler name, the day humanity became a legend, because it wasn't about claws or armor or victory. It was about a human who saw 6 frightened children and chose to fight anyway. A moment so small it could have been lost to time, and yet it reshaped the destiny of 2 entire species. So if you ever doubt how much one act of courage can matter, remember Arya Chen. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't built for war. She was a scientist with steady hands, a quiet mind, and a heart that refused to abandon those who needed her. She didn't fight to win. She fought to protect. And that made all the difference. Because in the end, strength isn't about power. It's about purpose. If this story moved you, even for a second, hit that like button. Subscribe if you believe in what makes humanity unstoppable, not our weapons, but our heart. And share this video with someone who might need a reminder that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, stay here, I've got you. This was a human who died protecting the predator cubs and became immortal in every blade. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stand when others run.